There comes a time in every Sewit's life where they find themselves in need of fabric perhaps not so easily procurable. Or they're on vacation and want to pick up some shiny fabric they can't get anywhere else. So they find their way to a garment district. If you have never been to a garment district and are hoping/planning to go sometime in the future, you are in for a world of wonder, my friend. The first time I went to the Toronto Garment District, I saw more variety of fabric in 3 hours than I had in my entire life up until that point. My mind was blown and a whole new world of sewing possibilities was open to me. But it was also a little bit overwhelming. I recently made a trip back to the Toronto Garment District, and while I was riding the subway, I realized that there really aren't a lot of tips and suggestions out there for traversing this unique world. So I thought it might be beneficial to share with my fellow crafters some wisdom that I've learned from my adventures. These tips are going to be non-location specific, so whether you're going to the Garment District in New York City, Goldhawk Road in London, the Fashion District in Toronto, Nippori Town in Tokyo, or any other city around the world that boasts a collection of fabric stores in one centralized area, these tips should help you out. I've also broken down my list of tips into 2 sections, planning ahead and while you're there. So from one introverted sewist to another, let's dive in. Planning ahead. Tip 1. Make a shopping list ahead of time. Going in without a list means you might end up forgetting to get that one thing you actually made the trip for, or buying excess stuff that you really don't need. Also, include in the list the yardage needed so you know exactly how much of each fabric you need, and so you don't accidentally underbuy. I keep my shopping list on my phone, and I break down my list by priorities. Top of the list, I have my current and next upcoming projects. These are things I'm either making right now or plan to make in the next 1 to 5 months. Then I have next year projects. I am trying to sew through my stash, but there are a few projects where I know I'll need to buy some special material, so these are projects for 6 to 12 months out. And then I have blue sky down the road projects. These are projects that aren't on my immediate list to make, but if the perfect material waltzed into my life, then I would move them up to a higher priority. Having this last part of the list helps me keep my eyes open so I don't miss anything cool. You'll see on my list that some things have emojis beside them. This is my own personal code. Sparkle means it's a tip-top priority. Y'all better find this or we in trouble. And the scissors means that I have some of the materials needed and I have swatches with me. Speaking of swatches, if you have some materials for your project and you need that last lining or trim or accent fabric, bring a swatch. Do not rely on your phone's camera to give you an accurate color because material colors can change a lot depending on lighting, backgrounds, camera settings, etc. Bring a little cutting of your fabric so you can match exactly to what you already have. This will save you a lot of potential disappointment. And I will freely admit that up until recently, I was content to just bring things loose in a little Ziploc baggie. But since my last trip, I decided I needed a better way to carry my swatches, a way that wouldn't potentially get lost when I clean out my purse. I have this little handmade notebook that I picked up at a pen show last year, and I finally decided that the perfect use for it would be a travel swatch book. In it, I have the project name, what each swatch is, and where I got it from. Kind of like a mini version of a costume designer's project Bible, but this one is light and small and can fit easily in my purse. You definitely don't need to make a dedicated swatch book, especially if you're just getting started. But keep all your swatches in an easy-to-reach, safe spot. Also in planning, research the stores in the area. Check out their online shops, social media, and reviews. Make a list of all the stores you want to get to make sure they fit what you're going to be looking for. If you are on a hunt for only embroidered lace and silk chiffon, maybe you don't need to go into the store that only specializes in wool fabrics. Likewise, if you're only looking for budget-friendly options for some wool or cotton blends, maybe you don't need to go into the luxury, ultra-high-end bridal ball gown store whose fabrics start at $80 a yard. Unless you want to drool and dream about someday being able to afford fabrics that could make you cry, they're so pretty. Just saying. 3B. This is a bonus tip for all you notorious overplanners out there. Map out your trip as well. There's a feature on Google Maps where you can add multiple pinpoint destinations, and that was super helpful when I went to New York last year. One of the recommendations I heard in Bernadette Banner's first Garment District vlog was to go to the trimming shops first, so you get the lightweight purchases like ribbons, lace, threads, and buttons out of the way first, and I wholeheartedly agree with this. I'd much rather start my day out carrying 5 yards of lace around rather than 5 yards of coating wool. So on my shopping list, below the fabrics I'm looking for, I saved the list of the stores I want to get to and their addresses. That way I can pull the shops up on maps and decide what order I want to take. Part of that order also comes from their operating hours. Important one that. Some shops are only open on certain days and tend to close earlier than you might think. You don't want to miss out on a crucial store by going on a day when it's not open. Number 4, pack smart. What you bring or don't bring can make or break your trip. Since I know I'll likely end up carrying a whole lot of weight by the end of the trip, I try to start out by carrying as little as possible. I usually pack my wallet like I do for a Comic-Con or a Ren Fair. Transit card, debit and credit card, and some bills. That's really all you need. Obviously pack your cell phone for navigation, emergency contacts, shopping list, and reference photos. Side note, if you're like me and keep most of your inspiration photos saved on Pinterest, download them to your phone's album before you go. Some stores have spotty data access, and you don't want to be standing in front of a fabric scrambling to try and get a signal. Other things that I've found to be handy. A spare lightweight fabric tote bag or two. Most stores will give you plastic or paper bags, but fabric adds up in weight, and that weight really digs into your arms and hands after a while. So if you have the option to switch to a bag with a wider, more comfortable handle, highly recommend. Also, snacks and a water bottle. Something small that will keep your blood sugar and energy up that you can snack on in between stores is always a good idea to have on hand. I usually bring a granola bar or a couple of mini chocolate bars, and a water bottle because hydration is important, especially if it's a warm day. You will be on a fabric high, and take it from me, it's really easy to get dehydrated without even realizing it. Now, I've heard other people recommend a mini stapler for attaching swatches to business cards, but I haven't personally found that necessary, and I know that I've seen staplers at most shops, so I feel comfortable skipping that tip. And the same goes for scissors for swatching. Most stores will cut a little swatch for you with their own scissors if you ask, and I personally would never feel comfortable cutting my own swatch, no matter how well I knew the staff. So cut down on the carry weight and just skip both of those. A notebook is kind of a your mileage may vary thing. Some people prefer to make all their notes and lists in a paper notebook and bring that along, and I am all for that. But if you don't ordinarily make paper notes, don't worry about trying to start when you're fabric shopping. That's why we have smartphones, am I right? Number 5, dress smart. You're going to be doing a lot of walking, so you want to be comfortable. This does not mean wear schleppy clothes, just something nice that's not going to be awkward or painful by the end of the day. I love incorporating a bit of history bounding when I go fabric shopping, but not at the expense of my comfort. This means I leave the American Duchess shoes at home and opt instead for comfy ankle boots or walking shoes. Also, avoid anything bulky or dangly. The aisles are often crowded, and you do not want to bump or snag on any fabric. My personal choice in an ideal situation would be to avoid garment district shopping in the middle of winter so that you're not hampered down by a big heavy coat. But sometimes it's unavoidable, so just make sure that you can still move freely in whatever you're wearing. So, you've decided what projects you're going to be shopping for, you've narrowed down the shops you're going to, your bag is packed, and you're ready to go. What do you do on the day to get the most out of your garment district adventure? Number 1, stay hydrated. This might seem kind of like a duh kind of tip, but it is really easy to lose track of time and how much water you've consumed, especially if you're shopping on a warm day and you're doing a lot of outdoor walking as well. Not drinking enough water can lead to headaches, irritability, loss of focus, and just generally not a good time. So bring a water bottle with you and sip frequently. Number 2, eat wisely. You're gonna need to eat at some point in the day, whether you're out and about for lunchtime or dinner time. The right meal can actually make or break your trip, considering that you're gonna be doing a lot of walking. Make sure you're satisfied without going overboard, and avoid really heavy meals. Maybe postpone the fish and chips or the all-you-can-eat sushi until after you're done all your walking. Ask me how I know. So whatever food is your jam, grab a quick bite, whether it's before you start, in the middle when you need a little break, or at the end when you're ready to rest your feet. Just save the big meal for when you're all done. Number 3, be ready to learn. Most of the staff at independent fabric stores are going to be very knowledgeable about their wares, and they will generally be happy to share that knowledge with you. Don't be afraid to ask questions and learn from what they tell you. I have been on the hunt for a couple of particularly specific fabrics, and I was feeling kind of stuck on what to look for. I showed my reference photos to my favorite fabric shop owner, and he was able to tell me exactly what I should be asking for. And even though he didn't have a perfect match, I now know that I can go into any fabric store, anywhere, and tell them I'm looking for white, lightweight paisley jacquard, and they'll show me just that. Being around a multitude of fabric is also going to be an education in and of itself. Until I went to Bekenstein and Mood in New York, I did not fully appreciate just how fine and soft wool fabrics could be. I knew in theory from hearing other people talk about luxury wool and tropical wool and wool crepe, but it's one thing to hear someone on YouTube talk about it, it's another thing to actually feel the fabric in your hands and notice the difference in the subtleties of the weave. So learn from the people, learn from the fabric. This is going to be an educational experience whether you mean it to be or not. Number 4, don't be afraid to say no to staff or yourself. Most of the stores in garment districts are not mega corporations who don't care if you buy something or not. They are small, independent shops who care about their business. Now, most of the staff will generally leave you to your own devices until you're ready to get fabric cut or if you have a question. However, some staff take a more hands-on approach to selling their wares, and their styles can range from friendly and amusing to pushy and potentially intimidating if you're not prepared. But really, it boils down to it's your money, your project, your choice. If the fabric they're recommending doesn't fit what you're looking for, it is perfectly acceptable to say, no thanks, and either ask to see other options or go to a different store entirely. And I'm saying that as an introverted people pleaser. Just because a staff member is singing the praises of a fabric does not mean that you have to buy it. And even if they're offering you a good discount, if it's not the fabric you need or want, you do not have to buy it. And to listen to my favorite shop owner talk, he would sell me the entire store if I had the budget. But I have learned the art of admiring and moving on. And speaking of not needing a fabric, you are allowed to say no to yourself. If you impulsively like a fabric, but you know that you have no long-term need for it, that it would end up hidden in the back of your stash, guilt of not using it thumping away like a telltale heart, you can tell yourself no. If a fabric initially looks good, but the more you think about it, the more you realize that it wouldn't actually be the right call for your project, you can leave it on the bolt and walk away. No one is making you buy the fabric. It can be fun listening to your impulsive magpie brain sometimes, but for the most part, your budget and storage will ultimately thank you. My mom and I have both walked away from fabrics that we were initially ready to buy, but the more we thought about it and compared our reference photos, the more we realized it wouldn't be the right call. Our wallets thanked us, and we have no regrets. So whether it's a staff member pushing a fabric or your brain saying, do it, buy the thing. If your gut says it's not the right fabric, consider this your official permission to say, nah, I'm good. Number 5, leave room in your budget for spontaneity. I know I just talked about not necessarily buying the shiny fabric that you don't currently have a use for, but sometimes you gotta have a little fun. If you only budget for exactly what you need, you might miss out on something particularly awesome. I don't usually go in with a strict, I am only going to spend $200 in the garment district mentality, but since I usually go in with a plan of what materials I'm looking for and how much yardage I intend to buy, it's not too hard to have a rough estimate in my head of what the total amount is going to be for the end of the day. And I build into that estimate a little bit of room for funsies, whether it's sparkly beads or shiny trim or a couple of yards of fabric that catches your eye and cries out to be made into a thing. Don't leave your shopping budget so tight that you have to leave the shiny pretty behind. Is it impulsive? Yep. Do you potentially end up with something cool and unique to craft with down the road? Oh yeah. So I hope you found these tips useful for your future garment district adventures, and if you've already had an adventure in a garment district and have tips of your own, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more geekery meets history sewing adventures, please hit the subscribe button. If you want to see behind the scenes and funny memes, you can check out my Instagram, and if you'd like to support the channel and help fund more garment district shopping trips, I do have a Ko-fi page. Stay creative, and I will see you soon with another video.